Hello, everybody. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Welcome to another installment of Dwayne Allen Guitar Concepts. I haven't seen you guys in a while, but hey, I got a life, man. I got students, I got classes, I got a family, I got to practice. I'm starting a gig now, so I'm coming to you guys when I can, but I'm going to try to keep it as regular as possible. So we're going to have today's lesson in the intermediate category. This is going to be for those of you who are getting into jazz now. You're starting to learn how to improvise. You're starting to learn some tunes. It's kind of new for you maybe, and you're just kind of getting the basics down. So I want to do this lesson on kind of two different areas. I want to teach you guys the idea of playing with chromaticism, and also just some techniques on helping your jazz phrasing, help you phrase better and more authentic. So if you're going to do this lesson, I'm assuming that you know a few tunes, you know some of the basic modes like Dorian and Mixolydian and all that kind of stuff. If you know that and you're starting to play tunes, then you're ready for this lesson, okay? So the first thing that I want to talk about is chromaticism, okay? What does chromaticism basically mean? Well, it's when you're adding in passing tones or chromatic tones that are not in the scale. Okay, so for instance, if I'm going to play a D Dorian scale in the 5th position, it would be this form. Okay, now as you can see, as with any scale, it's going to be a series of whole steps and half steps. And whenever there's a whole step, there's basically a space that's open, like a half step. So like for instance, if I'm playing the E string notes, okay, 1, 3, 4, okay, that means that there's a hole in that scale. There's this note right here, right? So if you were to play that scale and include that note as a passing tone, that means you're using chromaticism. So in other words, instead of going like this note right here, I'm going to add it in there as a passing tone. Passing tone means it's not part of the scale. So it goes like this. Okay? So I just played 4 chromatic tones in a row, but 3 of them were in the scale. 1 of them was a passing tone, okay? If I was to play on the 2nd string, it would go 1, 2, 4, okay? So that means that this note here would not be part of the scale, so it's a passing tone, right? You can go up, you can go back. So I might do something like this. Right? That already sounds like jazz as it is, right? So one of the things that I try to teach with a lot of my newer jazz students is how to use chromaticism. The first thing I work on with them is basically just learning, okay, what kind of scale do you play over what kind of chord, right? So like if we're soloing over a D minor 7 chord, you could play a D Dorian, or you could play the D minor 7 arpeggio. So that's the first thing I do, is I just have them improvising using D Dorian, D minor 7 arpeggio, so that they get the sound of that scale or mode in their ear. But once they get that down, it still doesn't quite sound like a jazz solo. Like if you hear like Charlie Parker or John Coltrane or Wes Montgomery, it doesn't still sound like what those guys play, because we're not using chromaticism yet. So let me show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to play with the backup tracks of this song, So What, because it's got D minor for a long, long time. That way we don't have to worry about switching chords. So here's So What, and I'm going to stay in the Dorian. I'm going to play real simple. Right? So that's basically playing strictly around the scale. I'm not adding in anything extra. No chromaticism, no passing tones. It sounds okay, but it doesn't really sound like jazz, okay? So I'm going to do it again this time, and I'm going to add in some chromaticism. So, I'll be doing, like if I'm on the 2nd string, I might add in this chromatic tone, this passing tone. And I might go on the 1st string where it goes 1, 3, 4, I might go, right? And then I'll kind of play around with those 2 strings, and maybe I'll play on the G string, it goes 1 to 3, right? I might throw the passing tone in there. Okay. Now, one thing to remember is when you're going from string to string, you can do passing tones as well. So like, let's say if I'm going from the second string to the first string, right? From this note to this note, I could do a passing chromatic tone this way. So you're kind of, or that kind of thing. So you can do it switching strings as well. Okay, so watch me how I do this. Wow, all of a sudden, it sounds like jazz. I remember when I started to get into jazz, I knew a lot of these scales and modes, but then when I heard like a jazz guitarist or a jazz musician performing, same thing, guitarist, musician, I would hear all this chromaticism and I would go, what are they playing? What are those scales? I don't know these scales. They weren't playing different scales. They were just playing the same scales that I already knew, but with passing tones using chromaticism, okay? That just makes it sound a lot more like jazz, okay? And that's one thing that you can do, whether you're playing jazz music or even like fusion type stuff. If you're playing like a rock vamp or something, you throw in some chromaticism and all of a sudden it sounds like jazz. I'm going to do this over a standard really quick. I didn't have this one pulled up. Give me a second to pull this up. I'm going to do... I just changed my mind. I'm going to do the song Autumn Leaves. Autumn Leaves, you can simplify, and you can play tonal centers, which I talk about in one of my other videos. But like Autumn Leaves, you can simplify it. You can play, you know, most advanced jazz musicians would play, you know, they're addressing every chord individually, A minor 7, D7, G major 7, right? But you can simplify Autumn Leaves where you do G major and E harmonic minor. Okay, so I'm going to play a solo, a simple solo. First time around, no chromaticism. I'm just going to play melodies around G major. I'll even call out the tonal center. Here's G major. Oh, what the hell sound is that? You guys hear that cheesy organ sound? That's terrible. Let's try it again with some Rhodes. Okay, here we go. G major. And E harmonic minor. So maybe that sounded okay. I tried to be as musical as I could, but I didn't use any chromaticism, okay? I strictly played melodies in the scale. Still works, it just doesn't sound very jazzy, right? It doesn't have a lot of chromaticism or anything. So now I'm going to do the same concept, but I'm going to throw in some passing tones, right? So like if I'm on the third string, G major, it goes 1, 3, 4, I might go, right? And then like on the fifth string, 1, 2, 4, I might go that kind of a thing. So all I'm doing is playing around the scale, but I'm throwing in chromatic tones. It makes it sound much jazzier. Okay, so let me try this again. So G major. E minor. G major. E. See? Sounds way jazzier. I wasn't playing any altered scales. I wasn't playing any kind of hip modes or anything like that. All I did is play the major scale and the harmonic minor scale with some passing tones. That's all I did. It's a great way to make your lines sound jazzier. Now, the big question that I get from a lot of students is, how do I know which passing tones to use? Are there certain ones that you should use over others? How do I know if I'm doing it enough or not too much? Those are all difficult questions to answer. There's probably some books out there that will tell you, when you're playing this scale, these passing tones are more used. I don't think that way. I use my ear. Okay, so the best way for you to learn how to get good taste when knowing how much chromaticism to use and when and where to use it, it just comes from your ear and experience. So you can overdo it. If you have too many passing tones, it'll start sounding like circus music. So getting back to the Dorian, I might go, right? That sounds terrible. It sounds like circus music. So if you overdo it, it sounds cheesy and lame. And if you underdo it, it's okay. But the best way that you're going to learn how to do this is when you start learning solos by the masters. When you start learning Charlie Parker solos, or John Coltrane, Wes Montgomery, Clifford Brown, any great jazz musician. Once you start learning their solos and study their lines, you're going to see how they use chromaticism, how much, how little. And once you start really internalizing all those solos and you're singing them and you're hearing them 1,000 times, your ear will start to tell you when is the right amount and which notes work. When my students are improvising and they're using chromaticism, I'll just tell them use your ear. If there's certain notes that you like the sound of, do those. If there's certain notes that you don't like, don't do those. Let your ear be your guide. If you listen to tons and tons of great jazz and the great masters, you'll know what sounds good and what doesn't sound good. Okay, so that's chromaticism. So I would highly recommend you start experimenting. And you can do with chromaticism with any kind of scale. Major, minor, Dorian, Mixolydian, doesn't matter. Okay, another thing. Phrasing. Let's talk about phrasing for a minute. One of the big things that I notice with beginning improvisers, especially guitar players, is their phrasing is not as good as it can be. And one of the things that I notice that they do is they pick every note all the time. It makes it sound kind of stiff and almost staccato. Whenever you play jazz and you want to swing and you want to have a nice legato sound, you have to slur a lot, which means hammer-ons and pull-offs. So, right, I'm going to solo again over, I'll solo over, I want to get back to So What again. And then I'm going to I'll use some chromaticism since we talked about that. I'm going to use chromaticism, but I'm not going to pick every note. I'm going to do slurs and hammer-ons, but I'm going to mix it all together. And that's going to make the phrasing better. And I'll actually show you the difference. Here's where I pick every note. I am doing swing eighth notes. Right, but it's still kind of not good. Now I'm going to play where I'm using some slurring, hammer-ons, pull-offs, and then you'll see how it's going to change it up and sound much more legato. Makes it swing a lot more, right? So I would recommend slur more. It'll make you have much better phrasing. The other thing that you might want to add, which is very popular, is triplets, okay? You want to try to vary your rhythm more, and that deserves its own lesson in itself. But if we want to talk about phrasing, two things I'm giving you is slur more and then throw in some triplets. You want to master swing eighth notes, but then eventually you got to break it up. So you saw me do a couple triplets, okay? So I'm going to do it again where I'm going to do slurring, chromaticism, but I'm going to throw in some triplets. And I'm also going to leave a little bit more space because that's a big part of having a good jazz solo. So. right, triplets. So you see what I was doing? I was doing some other things too. I was speeding up a little bit. I was doing triplets, but changing up the rhythm instead of going do ba do ba do ba do ba do ba bit it up do those kinds of things. You know, those are all things that'll break up the rhythms and make your lines more interesting. What's the best way for me to learn how to do all of these things? Learn solos from the masters. If you learn solos from the masters, you're going to be doing all of these things. You're going to be doing chromaticism. You're going to be doing triplets. You're going to be doing slurring. That's what a lot of my students ask me. They want exact details. How do I do this? How do I practice this? How do I practice that? And I constantly tell them over and over, learn the solos of the masters. The masters do all of those things. You can sit there with a checkbook and, you know, with a book and go, I'm going to do this technique and this technique and this. That's fine if that's your way of doing it, or you can just learn bird solos. You know, I personally would rather just learn great solos and internalize all that great music, and then you're practicing all of these techniques, plus many, many others that I haven't even talked about, okay? These are just a couple ideas for you guys to think about if you're getting into jazz and you want to start making your lines sound more authentic and everything. These are a few things you can do. There's 100 other things, but this is it for now. So I hope you enjoyed. If you like this video, please hit subscribe. I need to get more people to subscribe. There's not enough. I got to get some more of you guys. So if you like these lessons, please send it to your friends. You know, I want to get my videos out there and get a good audience for it. And if any of you are interested in private lessons, hit me up. You don't have to, but, you know, I can help you if you're interested. So if you enjoyed the video, leave comments. You can tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about, whatever you want to do. But I'd love to hear from you, and I look forward to seeing you guys next time. Have a great day.